Welcome everybody to another episode of Cool Down. These episodes are birthed out of basically at the track. When the cars are cooling down, you've had a good day, you get together and chat. All right, thank you, Tito. Yep, we got this thing. So again, Melissa, we keep these super loose, and they're made to bring value to people who watch them, and they usually start something like this. So
cool. Here we are.
Here we are. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Cool Down. On this episode, we have Melissa Miller in the house, who I personally just started running into through the print house and also seeing around town and through the industry. And so I think last week I was just like, hey, you should come through and shoot a cool down. So we're here bright and early in the morning, and we're getting after it, and we're starting this thing up.
Yep.
So Melissa, do you want to, so again, just super loose. These were birthed out of racetracks, right? When you would get done drifting, we all used to sit around the pit and just basically be like talking shit, hanging out. And then that's where a lot of the, magic happens, right? So like, the whole concept is your car's cooling down and we're hanging out, we're talking trackside. So
yeah, that's
the vibe of this podcast, if you will. So welcome to 144, and maybe hit us with a quick intro on yourself if you can.
Yeah, so I'm Melissa Miller. Melissa Drifts on Instagram. I have been drifting for, I guess, about 18 years. And I've been in and out of different, genres of drifting, or what would it be, regions. I started in the Twin Cities and with LadiesDriftDay Chicago, in the Midwest at USAIR. Mm-hmm. And but back when it was called Shawano, so I always in my head call it Shawano. But that's kind of where I started drifting.
That is so cool. Quick story on that was I remember going to Grid Life and I pitted next to Sam, which I don't know if you know Sam. He flies pretty under the radar. He had a BMW that was white, and him and his family, from what I know, they own USAIR.
Currently?
Current still, yeah.
Well, I heard that they had that they got bought out since, almost 20 years ago.
Okay, yeah. I think then Sam's family must have been the purchaser.
Okay.
Because I seen Sam at Grid Life 2021 or something, and yeah, it was really cool. Long story short, he ended up drinking some beer, and his lady was like, Sam owns USAIR. And I'm like, Sam, why didn't you tell me? Anyways.
I would feel terrible if I did know him, and then I say I don't. But I don't think I know. But we used to camp on that track, and this is in 2005, early 2006. Or no, 04 or 05. But we used to camp out on track and party heavily. And everybody would tell me, you need to party heavy because you can't be sober learning to drift.
Dude, sounds like my youth.
So basically everything that you're learning drifting is not what you learn driving. So they wanted you to lose a little bit of your inhibitions. You'd sober up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But that morning you had all of the kind of looseness that you need of learning to drift, and less of the anxiety. But yeah, that was kind of where I started, and then tried out for Formula D in 2006. I did the 2006 qualifier at Irwindale, and I was one of 28 cars that crashed into the wall.
Wow.
Because it was raining that day, and I definitely had no business drifting the high bank. Mm-hmm. I couldn't even do a figure eight. Mm-hmm. I had been drifting a little bit at USAIR, but I had no business drifting at Irwindale.
Well, dude, we're jumping right into it right here, but how? How would you go from no figure eights, let's say, to the Irwindale bank? And that says a lot about yourself as far as the nerves it would take to go do that.
I also street drove it from Minnesota to California to try out for Formula D.
Dude, who is she?
But that was back before Formula D had all these regulations. I had a bolt-in auto power cage in my 300ZX. And so street driving that to California, crashed into the wall. I moved the K-rail that was guarding the judges 2 or 3 feet. The judges had to jump back.
Well, let's slow down. So remind me when you got into a car for the first time. How did you find drifting? How did you get into drifting? Let's start with obviously what 18-ish years ago this happens, but like where were you? And were you a motorsports family? Were you like, tell me about it.
So my dad growing up always had a Z car. Whatever the current model was, like that's what he wanted. And so he had a Z, and I remember being like 3 years old, sitting on his lap in our neighborhood, and he's teaching me how to steer and to shift the gears, his hand on top of mine, shifting gears at a really, really young age.
Wow.
And he, like that memory, like I can remember it like it was yesterday. And so growing up, my dad had gotten sick, and it was just me and him. I was taking care of him. And then I went to go visit my mom, and she just kept me in Minnesota. My dad was in Arizona. So I'm in Minnesota, and I'm trying to like grasp anything I can to like connect me to my dad, who's still sick and in the hospital. And the cars was one of them. And so I had, instead of I had a couple NSYNC posters, but I had mainly like this whole like vision board of like different cars that I wanted and motorsports and stuff like that. And I'd get like the different magazines, Super Street and Import Tuner, and I'd cut out, stuff, I'd put it on my board. And then when my dad passed, it really like accelerated, like I gotta do this. And it had to be a Z car because that's what he had. So like my 300ZX is tattooed on me. And like for car shows and stuff, it was cool because, I have my car tattooed on me. But in reality, it's like a connection to my dad.
Absolutely. Man, I think that, that's super powerful. You know what I mean? Like I can parallel with you on slightly, not necessarily family, how do I word that? When I was younger as well, I had one of my best friends and he had passed away, and that
that's like family.
It gave me so much drive. You know what I mean? So like to your point, like that's like an infinite amount of energy gained, and that's crazy. One of your first memories were like him teaching you how to drive, and wow.
Imagine your son, just maybe in another year and a half, sitting on your lap, and is just kind of making sentences and all that, like, and everything, and you're already teaching him. So I even have some photos of my dad and I. I'm sitting on his lap, and we're playing a Ferrari racing game.
That's so cool.
Video game.
Well, so then that's an amazing start. You know what I mean? Like that's really cool. Then from there, how did you translate that into actually getting into cars, right? So like now you're in Minnesota, you love cars, you love your dad, you got this momentum through dad.
Yeah.
And like when did you get your first car, or like how did it come about that you started getting active behind the wheel?
So my dad, when he passed, he left me a lot of things. His car being one of them, but not a Z. At that point, he had gotten rid of the Z. But he had a 98 Maxima. But back then, it was still relatively kind of new. But he had waited 6 months for it to be manual transmission and the trim that he wanted. So I took the Maxima was my first car. It was, and I felt Fast and Furious came out right around the same time, and Vince drove that year Maxima in Fast and Furious, so I totally thought that I was killing it at the street races.
It was on point. Yeah, you're like, I'm ready.
Yeah. So that car sat, because I didn't have a license yet. I was 14-ish, and so the car sat in the driveway for a couple of years, and I'm starting to modify it while it sits in the driveway. And at the time, systems were big also, so I had put 2 10-inch JL audio subs in a band pass box in the back, and I worked at Circuit City for a while, so I put a TV in it with a PlayStation. It was really pimp.
There you go.
And but then I started stealing my mom's car. She had a BMW, an E36.
I thought you were going to say you started stealing from Circuit City out here.
No.
I was like, dang.
But I would steal her car first because it was an automatic, and I got pulled over. Literally, we pushed it out of the garage, pulled it around the corner. I was 14, and then the neighbor across the street. It was 2 a.m. She had no business being awake, but she called the cops, and basically the SWAT team came and K9 unit and everything.
Oh, and you had to push the car away from the house because you couldn't start it to wake up mom.
Right.
Wow.
So we'd pull the thing on the garage to push it up, and then push, my friend Callie and I, we pushed the car out, and then once we got it into the street, we turned it on. And it didn't have exhaust or anything, but we were just trying to be super careful.
Yeah.
And then we literally made it around the corner, got surrounded by like 6 cars. But my stepdad at the time, he was a photographer, and he knew all the cops. He did their like group photo every year. So we managed to kind of get out of that. Not as, like, obviously my mom didn't press charges, but I think it was like a $30 fine for not driving with a license. It didn't specify that I was so underage and like stole a car. It just, they wrote the ticket as didn't have a Minnesota license.
Dang, that's crazy.
But
like your like ambition behind cars is like out there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like it's crazy to see that. Like those stories are like my story was like, I don't know, I took a year to put a motor in it. Like it just took me time. You know what I mean? And you're just like pushing a car out of a house down the street. Let's get in this thing. Like
we wanted to go to the street races.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, obviously we didn't really know how to drive, but we figured we'd figure it out along the way.
So did you ever make it to the street races?
No. I mean, I did once I turned 16 and I had my Maxima to go to the races, and being a manual transmission and a V6, and the Maxima is 4-door sports car, and but I would like kill some Civics. And, you know, they're little 4-cylinders. They think they're so fast with their gutted, no exhaust. And I come with my fully interior PlayStation, you know, subwoofers in the back.
Yeah.
And no, but like the Max was, that's what we called it, the Max.
The Max.
It was legendary.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd imagine.
But I had put a Zex wet nitrous kit on it. I had a cold air intake. My dad actually had put an exhaust on it before he had passed.
Sick.
And then I worked at Discount Tire also. I worked at Discount Tire from 3 to 6, and then from like 6 to 9, Circuit City. And so at Discount Tire, I was buying one wheel at a time on layaway because you're in high school and you're not making a lot of money.
Yep.
But I knew, you know, that's what I wanted. So I think at one time I had 2 wheels in the back. I don't think I ever afforded the front wheels.
Dang. That is so cool though. Like, so then I'm trying to think about like, again, so you never made it to the street races until you got to be 16, of course. And then like, how long did going straight work out for you? Because obviously you drift. So it's like,
well,
tell me about that.
Street races, you know, are early 2000s. I had a friend, his name is Matt, and actually a year or 2 ago, I found him on Facebook and I messaged him because it was years since talking to him. But I thanked him for him getting me into it. So he had an S13 and it was red, and we're going through like, he's like, here, there's this new thing, it's called drifting. And this is in like 2004-ish. He's like, there's this new thing, it's called drifting. It came from Japan, and he was all about it. He, like, the level of excitement he had, like, was my excitement was nothing compared to his excitement.
Yeah.
And so he goes, here, try it. And like, he had just drifted like a 4-lane freeway in between Minneapolis and St. Paul. Like, no, I mean, not a lot of people were on it, but he's like doing it. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And so then later that evening, we go to this like residential neighborhood. But in Minnesota, the residential this particular one, it's really spread out, but really curvy roads. And so I crashed his car into a tree. But only like the back little quarter panel, and the car was totally drivable to like go home.
Yeah.
But instead of being mad at me about it, he goes, yeah, you know how much street cred this gives you? Like, and then that's when I learned, like, you know, standing on the car was cool, and like, you know, pushing yourself to the point of like damaging your shit was like kind of cool. And I was like, I got to get into this. Dang. So then I sold the Maxima, which was kind of heartbreaking because it was my dad's.
Right.
And then I got a 300ZX, a Z32, not knowing, you know, I knew I wanted the Z car. I couldn't quite get the 350 yet, so I got the 300.
Yeah.
And you know, it was the 2+2. It was underpowered. 500 miles into this, the engine blows.
Dang.
And everybody, this is before putting LSs in cars was like a real big thing.
Yeah, yeah.
My brother and all his friends were like, put an LS in it, put an LS in it. I'm like, no, I'm a purist. Like, it's got to be a Z, like a Z engine. So put another Z engine in it, and then basically forgot about that car because while that was happening, I bought a twin turbo 300ZX. But it has Hikis, the 4-wheel steering.
Yep.
So I was trying to learn drifting with Hikis.
Right. No.
Terrible.
Not good. No.
No, but it took like a year, and then I got the Eliminator, and but
Yeah. No, that's really, really cool. So then you're making your way into the Z, right? Like then from there so like how long, because I know like our timelines are close, right?
Yeah.
Like in 2004, I was also in high school and I was coming around and learning about drifting, and similar story. Like my buddy Joseph would be at the skate park and there'd be a concrete slab into like a gravel slab, and he had an auto S13 coupe, and he just would throw it into the gravel and just like spin out.
Yeah.
But he would watch Initial D and preach about how drifting was coming alive and how cool it is, and like, so similar stories, right? You have that one friend that gets you into it, and then you're just like, this is for me. Then from there, you work through the cars. Like I remember, I personally went out and I got a 3rd Gen RX-7, which randomly at a dealership they had one, and I brought my Jetta in, and I was like, I want to trade this Jetta in for this car, and the guy was like, don't do it. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know enough about cars. This car's rare. You're going to break it, whatever, right? The rotary's going to take a lot of, like, love to keep it alive.
that was a good salesman to try to talk you out of
Seriously,
it.
he tried to talk me out of it.
Like,
and I was like,
he had
nope.
morals.
I was like, I saved up money. Here's a down. Like, take this money and my whole car and give me this thing. And, street drifting, wrecked it, realized how much one fender was, and sold it for a 240. But long story short, it was just like, same story, man. Friends, car choices, refining how to actually go drift and like get lap time, like get seat time. So then catch me up to when you actually started going to like an event and maybe you felt a little more comfortable, like that you were learning how to drift with purpose versus like street drifting with friends, right?
Yeah, because I tell people that like street drifting is way different than going to a track, and like the mental state you're in, and just like everything about it. People are like, oh, I'll drift this corner on the street. I'm like, no, it's totally different. And
for those watching, just to flash forward, like we're going to get into this later, but like Melissa runs her own drift days that are all girl drift days.
with Courtney.
With Courtney, I'm sorry.
Courtney Davis.
Shout out to Courtney Davis. But she does get groups of people together to go drifting now at her own events. So just backing up again now would be like from street drifting to track days are way different. But sorry, carry on.
Yeah. So, you know what? I
lost your train of thought. I know it. I'm sorry. Basically, we were talking about like when we both left street drifting, and like for me, I found Lone Star Drift, which was like Mineral Wells at the time.
Okay.
And you could go as fast as you wanted and throw the car into endless concrete. And like I realized like, ooh, I wasn't going to hit that tree or that curb, or I wasn't worried about the industrial parking lot getting blown out by cops.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of asking, when did you start going to the track?
Legit.
Yeah. When did you be legit?
It was at Shawano. So I mean, I was in Minnesota. I had graduated. You know, I don't really remember. It was somewhere in between, because I had an area of time. I graduated high school early, and because I had to get out of Minnesota. It was cold. I hated the winter. You couldn't drive your cars. Like it was terrible. So I graduated in like January. So like kind of, middle of winter, and that was when I tried out for FD in 06. So there's a chance I might have only street drifted until Irwindale. And then
That's ridiculous.
I think that's how that happened.
That is crazy.
If I have to really go into the timeline, I know I did Shawano.
But let me ask you this. What's interesting to me would be more or less like, if you can try to remember, like, what was your mindset when you're just like, I'm kind of street drifting, now I'm going to go to Irwindale? Like, do you remember what you were thinking to yourself? Like,
I didn't know what Irwindale really was.
Okay.
Until I got there. Okay. I was like, Formula D is like the next step, because, keep in mind, there wasn't much. Yeah, there wasn't any events, especially in the Midwest. I mean, I started going to drift days. It was drift day, I think it was 3, 4, 5, 6. I think those are the ones I went to. Like, I missed the first and second one, but like there wasn't anything there. So I'm like, well, and then in my head I'm like, I'm just going to go to a drift event. Like, it's not that I'm trying out to go pro. I'm going to a drift event.
Right. Okay, I see. So, that's cool.
But in order to go to this drift event, I had to have a cage. But at the time, it didn't have to be welded in. And imagine drifting Irwindale with a bolt-in cage, and that being totally legal.
Yeah. Dude, I remember, to your point, XDC, I went to Las Vegas for Extreme Drift Circuit.
Yeah.
And it was like showing up, and at the driver's meeting, they're like, all right, everybody, like, get your suits on. And I'm like, a suit? You know what I mean? I was like, what do you mean? And then, like, I had to run up to the store, get a race suit from, like, some drag race shop and come back. But, like, talk about, like, just throwing ourselves at it,
Yeah. Well, I have a photo here. I'll show you, and then we can, if you want, you can put it in.
Yeah, we'll throw it on the screen.
It was right after it happened. So that was after I crashed into the wall.
Dang.
And then this was that day. I just stumbled across these.
Wow. Yes, with all the DA dudes.
Moto, Chris Forsberg, Alex.
Andy?
Andy, yeah.
Yep.
That's different.
Wow. Guys, we're going to throw all those on the screen at the same time, Tito. Dang.
When those memes were cool oversteering.
That is so cool. Okay, cool. So let's, for the viewers here, let's try to dive into more current stuff. So let's translate or transfer out of where we were, and let's go to, like, now you're drifting and you feel more confident. Like, where'd you go after Irwindale? Like, how did your kind of drifting world progress?
I gave away everything I owned in Minnesota, and I moved to California. I knew that I had to engulf myself in it, and but like in order to kind of get to where we are now, not everything was nice back then because there wasn't a lot of girls, first of all, and I'm aware of my adorable cheeks that are kind of big. And people used to be really mean on the internet, and they used to call me chipmunk. There would be a lot of people, like, if you weren't perfect drifting out there, and a girl, like, you just got so much hate.
Yeah, it's kind of like you have a target on your back. Yeah. You're more rare in the industry. You're fighting against dudes that are fighting against themselves. You know what I mean? Like, the marketplace is competitive, and then for women in particular, it's more rare. So you just have that kind of target of, like,
eyes are always on you.
Yeah, and I think we still see that today. Like, I remember, I don't know if you know any of these same people, but, like, Sarah Burgess, who was, like, in a Mustang program. And then obviously Kelsey Rollings holds it down, but she always seems to kind of have that target of, like, come on, Kelsey, you can do it. You know what I mean? And then if she has car problems or something, we're just like, damn it,
Yeah.
So you had to work through that.
Yeah, and people on the internet are really harsh, and it doesn't get any easier, but, like, you just learn to, like, deal with it. So going from kind of a lot of, like, negativity, and, like, now I'm starting, like, I'm pushing through, and I know I want to do drifting, but with there are all these setbacks and all this hate and stuff like that. I just, like, the passion, almost doing it for my dad, like, all these reasons in my head to, like, keep going, wanted me to keep going, but I learned from that how I want events to be run. So, like, when we do our girls' events now, like, Courtney basically started it. So Courtney got with PPIR, Pikes Peak International Raceway, and formed that relationship for us to be able to start there. And she had asked me to do the talking and to do the in-class portion and help do the instructing. And then from that, like, I got really excited, and I'm like, the first event happened, and we picked the things that we liked from different events that we had gone to, and we also, like, made sure that the stuff that we didn't like, clickiness, like, we want it to be, like, a safe environment where nobody's going to be judged. Like, when girls spin out, we cheer. Like, it's just, like, we wanted to create the environment for growth rather than, like, the shutting down, and then maybe if they have enough perseverance, they'll push through and want to continue. We didn't want any of that. So just learning from those past, and she had a similar kind of backstory as well. She hasn't been drifting as long. I think 7 or 8 years now, but she still has that similar, like, we all of us females kind of have that similar backstory. Like, if you're not, like, kick ass out of the gate, like at your first event, then you just like people judge you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that's dudes too, but it's amplified as a female.
Yeah, for sure. And so for the viewers watching, give us a little 2-second on like what is the events called? Where do we find them? Like where do we, if I'm a cool chick watching right now, like where do I go to look up where you're at?
So LadiesDriftDay.com is the not really the event page, but where you can get like the shirts and the sweatshirts. And then when we have an event coming up, you can purchase the event like on that website. LadiesDriftDay, like at LadiesDriftDay on Instagram.
On socials, yeah.
So we'll every once in a while post a couple little photos or videos from, we'll stick a camera in the girl's car and be able to get like some cool footage from that, post it up. And then PPIR is like our main hub, but we were able to do an event at Utah Motorsport Campus this year, and that was really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That place seems super nice.
Yeah. Well, so Terry Henderson, do you know him?
I don't think so.
So he used to run like Drift Buffet and a ton of drifting out of SoCal. So when I had moved to Southern California, he was like my biggest cheerleader. And it was nice to like always go to an event and have somebody on my side.
Yeah.
And his events made me feel that way. And Terry moved to China for like 10 years and ran all the drifting in China.
Oh, cool.
And then when he moved back, he now runs all of the motorsports in and out of UMC.
Oh, cool,
And
cool.
so I hit him up and I'm like, can we have a girls' day there? But
we're on the way.
yeah, and it mostly like Utah, just like Colorado, we started with like around 10 girls. Like it started really, really small. But like this last one, we had to cap it at 40. Well, first we capped it at 30, and then we opened it up for like 24 hours, and 10 more girls signed up. So we had 40. And then with girls events, you have, you know, their boyfriends, their husbands, their kids. Everybody comes.
Yep.
And then I don't know. It was a huge event, and it ran better than I think either of us could have imagined with that many people. But Utah started with about 10. And I think that if we can just consistently keep going and keep having the events, even, you know, twice a year, I think we can grow that market too, because that's what Courtney and I really want. We want to get more girls into it. Yeah. And we just think that it would be, like, we know that it's growing like the market from almost nothing.
So I've never been to one of the events, but remind me, is it like, my boy is yelling in the back. Sorry if you guys hear a little kid yelling. Indy's back there yelling. But I've never been to the events, so remind me, like, at the events, is it like an open track day where we're just practicing all day? Do you have like mini comps? You know how dudes will do like slide into table, like fun stuff? Like, what is an average event like when you go to drive with you guys?
So eventually I think we'd like to have like maybe a little comp or a little like something to kind of further them. But since we started these events three years ago, and like we wanted to kind of grow and make it so basically, let me back up. The first half of the day, no matter what event, the first half of the day until lunch, we're doing donuts and figure eights, and that way it gets the girls, like it's a very beginner. That's cool. Like friendly. So we'll have instructors go in, teach you the basic. I mean, some of the girls have never even been in a drift car before. They just wanted, like they saw it and they wanted to. So we'll get them in one of our cars first. We show them what it feels like, so that way when the back end kicks out, they're not scared. And then most of the girls aren't scared. That reminds me of like the burnout box, right? So it's like in competition, you get your burnout box, which you, at least for myself as a driver, it's like I freestyle something that I make up in my mind, whether it be 2 figure eights and then reverse figure eights. And really it will like set the pace for my throttle control, like my steering, like I'll make sure my arms are loose. And so like having half of a day to do figure eights and donuts can sound very basic and very, you know, like, I don't know, man, I can drift already. Like, why would we waste half the day to do that? Yeah. But also, like, practicing that, like, I practice braking, throttle control, loose arms, like, how is my steering? And there's several different techniques that can get you, like, that you can, like, you know, figure out how to start it, like a donut or a figure eight. Yeah. And there's so many different things, like ways you can practice all of that. And it does, if for the girls that already know how to do it, it's just like a warm up for them. Yeah. But then we have lunch. after lunch, we usually have like 30 minutes because everybody loves group photos, especially me. And we'll get the girls on track with all their cars. We'll do a big group photo, and then we quickly get off. And while everyone's having lunch, a bunch of us will go on track, reset up the cones. So now figure eights and donuts are no longer. We might leave one or two up because most of these are just on skid pads right now.
Yeah.
So we'll leave one or two up. So if the girls, like there's one or two or a few that
they want to keep practicing.
They can do that.
Yep.
But some of the girls just want to send it.
Yeah.
So like in Utah, we had like a third gear entry.
Sick.
And that was what we did after lunch. And then like the Utah event, there was two girls that I don't believe they had drifted before, but by the end, like I was leading like a tandem with them. Like so that way they can feel what it's like to have another person on track at the same time.
Yeah.
And we were doing tandem donuts and like killing it. And then, just to see the girls' progression, and that's what we wanted to do, is just to be able to push them a little bit. And then that way, when the girls reach kind of a certain point, we can start asking them, hey, would you mind helping instruct?
Right.
Because that's kind of the next step. If you don't want to do the donuts anymore, help us instruct.
Yeah.
Like that would be really cool, because it's cool to have the girls teaching girls, because we learn way different than dudes teaching girls.
Yeah. And then it builds that structure of everyone starting to help everyone. Like everyone gets in line to instruct and start helping the next person.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you start to build that community where people just show up and they're all learning from each other.
Yeah.
And dang, you cultivated exactly what you wanted to build.
Yeah.
Dang.
It's the community. I think that if more people understood, the true meaning behind community and enthusiast, like within this, like the culture would be so rad.
Yeah. Well, let me transition us. So some things I think a lot about are like in drifting, for those who don't know, a lot of the drivers also do other things, right? Like whether it be a business they own or they work for something. Like a lot of times drifting is not their like full-time job, let's say. So for you, tell us about it, right? Like you paint cars, you offer services on body work and paint. Like what are you up to now, and like what do you do to go drifting, or is the Drift Days feeding everything for you already? Like what are you up to?
Drift Days we're not making any money on.
Yeah. See what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And it's cool because there's so much passion in the growth of drifting, but a lot of times it isn't a business that's earning and netting results in monetary form. But like, I don't know.
It's mentally rewarding.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to move that progression. But yeah, I opened up a body shop, and I was working for Nissan for a while, like within the dealerships as a service advisor. And while the money was good, COVID happened, and I told my boss, I'm like, let me go on furlough. Like, let me see, like I wanted to see if I could make it, because I went to school for auto body, forever ago, and I've always done side work. And I'm like, I wanted to see if I could make it
on your own.
On my own. And so I was taking a Xanax in the morning and a Xanax in the afternoon, working in the dealerships. Just my anxiety, I have anxiety for sure. And that was like what I needed. I needed a slap in the face to calm me down.
I think that happens a lot in the world. I think that there's that, divide between like, I'm doing this job and I hate it, but I make enough money, I think, to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Versus like, man, I really need to follow my passion and see what, I don't know, for me, following your passion and leaning into like whatever your intuition is telling you seems to always net a better result over time if you can hold that thought over time, right? Because a lot of times it's like, man, I want to drift, I want to be a pro. Like dudes will call up here at 144 because I will mentor a few people. And then it's starting to catch on, like they call me and ask me questions. But it's like, I want to drive FD next year. And I'm like, tell me about it. And they're like, well, they're just so far from that result.
Yeah.
And I try to teach them that, give yourself 5 years, give yourself 10 years. Like, I'm going to drift till I'm over 60. So, like, I feel like I'm just getting started. You know what I mean? So it's like, how much time do you have to get your dream to come true?
Well, you have to enjoy that process of getting there.
Yeah, you got to see it, and then you got to work daily on it. And then you got to hold yourself accountable to get those results and create those chapters. And similar to your drift days, it's like in a perfect world, I would love to figure out how they do make money, right? How could you do that at scale and make money on it? Similar to a Formula Drift or these series that have started in the same form of just let's go drifting into this is a business. And I think a lot about that.
I want to make, at least the ladies' days, I want to make it sustainable where we can, you know, afford to, where it's not coming out of our pockets to get trophies and like, just like gifts, basically.
Where I've mentioned to Melissa, like, man, I want to come to one of those events and hop up in front of everybody and talk a little bit. But like, where I want to try to push and teach drivers is like how to get sponsorships and how to, you know, when you're ready to take it from like, this is fun to, wow, I want to feed my family. That's where I want to step in and try to like mentor or shout out a few things, you know, because like that excites me. And I feel like in my life, I did it the opposite way I would have liked to, where I was like, wow, I'm street drifting. Holy shit, I'm in Formula Drift. Holy shit, I don't know anything about business. Wow, I've lost this whole momentum. Like I had my Formula Drift moment and I wasn't getting the results I wanted from my partners. And so I took myself out of the game to understand and get a new perspective to then hopefully bring me back one day.
And I had lost momentum too at one point. It's another story in itself, but I had taken myself out for about a year. And it's so hard once you're out to regain that momentum again. It's
insane. I had one partner, like one sponsor, and he told me like, Nate, when you leave, the money goes somewhere else. And I was like, yeah, but I'll be back next year. Like, I'm just going to go start this thing. 1 year later, I'll be back. And he's just like, the money moves. And I remember that now. And because when I went 2018, full print house, didn't touch a car. 2019, like, oh, let's get back into racing. Let's get back into drifting. And it was very difficult. Yeah. Like, half the people on my, like, list of, hey, we work together were like, dude, we've booked ourselves elsewhere. Like, it was very difficult to just like pick that back up, to your point.
Yeah, definitely. That even moving from California to Texas for me, I thought, well, I mean, in California, I was in the Television Motion Picture Car Club. I was working with a friend who, his family owns a company called Stunt Lab in LA, and I got to drive like his 240 for like this little commercial thing for this new camera, and like things were moving that, and I'm like, just because I'm in Texas doesn't mean any of that's going to change. Like I could still come out here and do stuff, but no, everything changes. If you have the momentum in one area and you make a change like that, like everything changes in a different direction.
Well, so welcome to Texas. How long have you been here? Like
since 2016.
Okay. Yeah. Dang, man. So we've been through some shit together. Like as far as like you, like I know it's not easy to feel like to parallel again, like my Hoonigan days where it was like when I went to California, I was featured on this and that and Ken Block's house and all these cool things. And then you come back to Texas and you're just like, okay, cool. It's not here.
Yeah.
Like the momentum isn't here necessarily.
It's a different momentum though.
True. Yeah. How are you enjoying Texas? How has it been? Like, you know what I mean? Like how?
Well, I mean, we moved to Texas to be central. That way we can hit up all the events. I mean, I go to, like we were going to Z Nationals, which is the big Z event in Georgia at Z1 Motorsports. And we were hitting that up a few times. It's once a year. But from San Diego to street drive the 300ZX, from San Diego to basically Atlanta, and back, you're driving for 4 to 5 days to get out there. The event is like 4 or 5, it's like maybe 3 or 4 days. Mm-hmm. And then another 4 or 5 days back and to hold a regular job.
It's like, a month. That's like half a month. Like you're spending 2 weeks on a moment.
Moving to Texas, it's like, the other event was in, Z Days was in like the Tail of the Dragon. Mm-hmm. So, San Diego to Tail of the Dragon, super far. And then, so all these events, I couldn't commit to fully East Coast stuff, but if we were in DFW, it was central and we could go to, No Coast in Albuquerque or, there's the Z-Car convention too, ZCon, and that one moves to a different location every year. But last year it was in California, 1 year it was in Nashville. So those ones are all over the place as well. And but yeah, that's the only thing I really like about it. But I hate the summers.
Hot.
Yeah,
Hot.
I'll take 40 degrees over 110 degrees any day.
Yeah, and we go from like, wow, it's super hot to wow, it's super cold very quickly here.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So then let's talk a little bit about your business in Texas, right? You mentioned like obviously you paint cars. Like how has it been? I know we both are operating businesses and trying to go drift and or run events. So like for me, I know my time gets thin and things get complicated, but like how are you doing and how's business and with you being away and trying to operate? Like tell me about it.
So the struggle that I'm figuring out is that if I'm not obviously if you're not at the shop, you're not making money because my hands have to be on a car. It's not like I'm selling a product that I could just
put on a shelf.
Yeah, put on a shelf and have somebody ship. I need my hands on the car to make money. So what I found was like going to ZCon this year in California, it was difficult because I had a whole bunch of work lined up and I was able to finish it before going to California. But then I knew I had to make enough to be gone for a week or two. Mm-hmm. And then, but I didn't think of that time that I'm gone, I'm not able to bring in more work.
Of course.
And then I get back from California. Let's just say it's a week. I get back from California. It's another week for me to like network enough to get another job in. And then it's another week for me to like finish and get paid for that job. And then now I'm on week, the month has almost gone by and I'm stressed to make the rent.
Yes.
So that's where I've been, that's what I'm learning right now.
Yes.
Is scheduling, I guess, making sure that there's a steady stream coming in.
Yeah. Oh, and we spoke about this. We spoke about this on the floor the other time when you came through for your shirts. It was like me explaining like my business mentor. So similar concept, right? Where I would print every single T-shirt that we did, and it was like I had a 6-color press and I was hand screening, and I was super proud. Like I did not want to stop screen printing every single garment that I sold. And my business mentor was like, yo, Nate, we're losing money out here. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you need to stop printing. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, there's no way that I'm going to stop sanding cars and painting cars and fixing it. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, so he taught me like how to hire someone, right? Like, how do you scale your business? How do you empower the right person to take certain roles off of your plate so like you can go be Melissa and run events and bring in work and make sure it's the quality of what you would be doing.
Yeah.
And like literally, dude, like as soon as that like clicked in my brain, like my life changed. And obviously it's still like, I'm so passionate about printing that I get sad sometimes that I'm like operating and, just more or less hands off.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe that's something for you or anyone listening. Like sometimes I think as an operator of a business, you got to get out of your own way and then you'd be surprised with how it could scale.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, just a little something I learned.
For now, I'll outsource to my friend, the painter next door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I get too busy or I need help with something. But I definitely want to get to the point of hiring somebody. But I'm mentally not comfortable yet, not even being the hands-off, but just being able to get the steady stream because I just opened just a few months ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the first thing I did was I wanted to get my name out there, so I sponsored Max's Paint Job.
I seen that. And literally through Max Verse, like that's one of the channels that I was able to like tune into you,
Yeah. And looking at that, I thought, Max is a good people. Like, he has his head on straight. Mm-hmm. Like, he doesn't pick fights with anyone. He's kind of like a peacemaker. Mm-hmm. But he just, and his content, it rocks because that's what he does. Like he's really good behind the camera, I feel like, so he knows what will look good on the camera. And so I felt like if I sponsored his car, that the stuff, the photos, the videos, whatever that would be made from that would look really cool.
I didn't even realize you sponsored his car.
Oh yeah. That was the first thing. I moved into the shop. We got everything set up, and like that week, he said he had to, because he was doing
Holly LS Fest, maybe. I think he.
Or me.
I think when
it might have been the Coda demo.
Okay, Coda. Okay. Yeah.
It maybe.
Yeah. That makes sense. It was right before one of those when he was like fresh, new livery, or new look.
I had just moved into the shop, and he goes, "I got like 4 days to get this done," and I worked all of those days.
Yeah.
And so I like from early morning until like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And was able to get his car done. He's like, "Are you sure you could do it?" I'm like, "I'm sure I got this.
I got this.
I can do this."
Well, then, like, I'm just gonna randomly guess here. So, like, from wrecking vehicles, like, how did you get into wanting to paint cars? Were you like, "Wow, I smashed this rear end.
Well,
now I need to fix it," or like, you know what I mean? How did you go from drifting and driving and the passion of cars to then fixing them and painting them?
It had nothing to do with drifting. That was a happy accident.
Right.
When I was in high school, in order to graduate early, I had to take college courses. Well, I'm not really interested in like the wrenching part of like the mechanics of the car. Like I can really good at diagnosing, but fixing it, I don't really care. But I'm really creative, and so the community college that was by my school offered courses in auto body, welding, auto body, and painting. So I took those courses in high school, and that was how I was able to graduate early. But I took those classes, and then my dad, before he passed, he said, you'll never be broke if you learn a trade. And so I had that in my head also of, all right, well, this is a trade, and it's worked out, because if I'm ever really short on money, I mean, before I opened up the body shop, I'd do like, a little side job here and there, painting a bumper or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's worked out.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And in your industry, it's going to be needed. You know what I mean? Like,
it's definitely super helpful.
Yeah, that's really, really cool.
And I know we were talking about events, and last time I was here with, just to kind of switch.
Yeah,
this
please.
Is a little ADD.
No, please, let's do it. Let's go. Yeah.
The Z-Con, the Z-Car convention. So it's a huge convention. If you haven't been, I mean, you have a Nissan, so I'd still recommend going.
Yeah, and I was plugged in a little bit through Forsberg. I know he goes every year. And so I either would like print some shirts for the moment, right? Like I stay tuned in, but I have not been to one.
So it's usually between 600 to 1,000 people, and it's a week-long event, and it changes cities. Like it's a different club that puts it on every year in a different part of the U.S., and then there was one in Canada a few years ago. But they just started incorporating drifting in the last few years. And so since it's so new within the Z-Car convention, they do have a motorsport division, like a motorsport team for like the HPDE days and the more like legit racing, you could call it.
Yeah.
But they didn't ever have, they haven't had anyone really in control of the drifting. So the last couple of years, the drift events so far have been pretty small and cheap, which is good. Just so we can kind of get more people to kind of get into it. But nobody's really taking control of a schedule and what to prepare for, and that email for the drifting. The drifting has always gone under the same email as the HPDE events.
I'm catching on. I think we got someone here who likes to do these type of things.
Yeah. So this last year, we kind of had a little bit of chaos, and it was at Willow Springs, and nobody kind of knew what was going on, and we're now digging into our track time. And I was like, all right, let's. I gathered everyone together. We put on a little drivers meeting. Me and Z
drives. Zendara.
Yeah. So she was there. Her and I, we did figured out what course we were going to take. It was just at Balcony, and we had the train of cars. We did a little parade lap so everybody would know how we're going to do this. I talked to track safety. I was like, I put on these other events. I can do this. Let me start this day. And they're like, okay.
You saved the day.
Yeah. But somebody had to make it happen. And so after that, we're all at we call it the hospitality suite in the hotel. So where everybody stays at the same hotel pretty much. And there's this big hospitality suite for a lot of people to go in.
I love when that happens. When everyone stays in the same area. And Anyway, sorry.
It's the community.
Yeah.
So a couple of guys that run it were walking through, and I was like,
My son again. Sorry, guys.
And I was a little buzzed. And I'm like, let me handle the drifting next year. For ZCon, let me just handle the drifting as they're we're walking past each other. And they're like, all right, call me in 2 weeks.
Beautiful.
And so I forgot, but they remembered that. So they were on a call a couple weeks ago, and Chris Carl messaged me, and he's like, hey, get on this call, if you still want to do handle all the drifting. So now I'm handling the drifting this year for ZCon, which is going to be in Florida, and we're deciding between a couple tracks. But I'm really excited to like have a little bit more control over that, so I can help mold that event, because it's been really small the last few years.
Yeah.
But I think with the right like marketing and the right like people involved with it, I think that we can like really grow that section of it.
Yeah, absolutely. When is that again?
It is September.
Okay.
It's in September.
Cool,
It's
cool.
like the second week of September.
Of 24, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. That's really rad. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, like
So-
being able to bring your, like, man, for those who know me, I word like prickly and gooey, right? So it's like, let's use my wife, for example. Like, she's prickly, like she's on time, schedule, got it laid out. Like, here's what's up. Lunch break is this. Donuts this time. We're on third gear this time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like gooey. I'm like this creative dude that's kind of like, all right, whatever. I'll show up and plug it in and put it together. And so it's cool that you can add that like prickly element to the drifting at ZCon.
Yeah, and now I've never been prickly.
She's like, don't
So
call me that.
This is the first time anyone's ever called me that.
Yeah, and it's a positive thing, and I really
Yeah.
do think like both are needed, right?
Yeah.
Like whether it be in business or relationships, like having kind of the structure versus having the mystery is what I'm trying to say.
I definitely feel like I'm growing into that. Like I find it more rewarding now to lift everybody up than just be in it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as, you know, I'd love to go pro in drifting,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more rewarding for me to, you know, get on track with a girl, sit in her passenger seat, give her direction, she takes it perfectly, and then, you know, links a course.
Yeah, you could be raising the next champion.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
you're putting your energy into like allowing the community to learn from what we've been through.
Yeah.
That's what's crazy about drifting is like once you do it for so long, some of the basics that we think are basics are teaching that next generation. And like, I don't know, did you have anyone that mentored you when you were younger? Like when you were at Irwindale with the DA dudes and Pfeiffer, and like, do you recall anyone that like straight taught you like you were teaching people then?
Not like that, no.
Cool.
Yeah, nobody
was more
that got
rare,
into
right?
the car with me. But like I mentioned earlier with Terry Henderson, you know, he'd be telling people to go, his events and stuff like that, and he'd give me little tidbits here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I never had anyone really sit in the car with me and say, do this
Yeah.
for like an extended period of time or
Yeah.
for like a track day.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, I'll transition us one more time here. And then if you think of anything that you want to bring up, feel free to. But I always like to ask and learn a little bit about like the business of motorsports as well. So like just in general, like are you going to go to SEMA? Do you have partnerships underneath your like driving or your company? Like, do you have sponsors? Do you promote and try to gain monetary support through your channels? Like, what's the business of your drifting like?
I would love to get to the point where I'm getting money. But right now, I do have some sponsors. I mean, Z1 Motorsports and John Parnham, they've been a huge help for like a decade or more. But John has, I mean, they tuned my car when I went supercharged. He did everything remote, so I didn't actually even have to go to Atlanta to have him tune my
Right.
car. So that was really nice. He took that like on his time. And then, I mean, KBD Body Kits has been a sponsor since 2016.
Well, so you don't actively look like you don't pitch that often to sponsor. Like I'm asking, like, why don't you have more sponsors?
Oh, and we can't forget Kanzai.
There we
Should
go.
Edit that in. Kanzai Wheels is also a sponsor.
Which wheel do you run?
So I have the Corsa and the Neo.
Cool.
But the Corsa is my favorite.
Awesome. No, that's cool though. And like sponsorships are difficult. You know what I mean? Like getting sponsors, maintaining sponsors, like trying to pitch to new sponsors. Like it's a whole thing, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so last year I was trying to buy cams, acres, and I spent.
Weren't we all?
Yeah. Well, I was able to raise $750,000.
Dang, dude. That's
But I asked Doug. I said, "Would you take $750 and owner finance the rest?" And he said no. And I I saw a post, and he had lowered the price a little bit, and somebody offered him $750K and asked if he would owner finance the rest, and he told him yeah. And so I messaged, and I'm like, I asked you this last year, like I could have done this, but I don't have that money anymore,
Yeah.
And so but I was able to do that through SEMA.
Oh, cool.
So going to SEMA, I was able to, talk to different people, and try to just raise money and.
Dude, that's
and
powerful.
But as far as for myself, I think that my struggle is like more internal. Like I'm afraid of, like I know how many times I have been like denied, and I know I have to push through, but I don't know. I don't know why. It's a mental block for me. And I always, like in our classes for like the girls drifting, I always tell them like, you're only going to be as good as what you're mentally capable of.
That's absolutely true. I fully agree with that. And like, I had to find that for myself too. It's like, it's like hanging on to all the no's can make you feel pretty bummed out to try to even ask again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But also then, so for example, then you're like, oh, here's a racetrack, right? So this is a goal that's not attached to me, but I'd love to accomplish this goal, which then everyone could go drive at and be a part of. But then you go raise over $500,000.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like you could do it, but if it's for your own self, you're like more reluctant to do it.
Well, I don't want to seem like I'm going up to these people and I'm super cocky, like look at me, look at what I can do. But I know you have to do that in order to get what you want. But I like
to try to think about it like I'll use an example with like VP Racing Fuel. It's like I feel like that company is very like iconic as far as when I was a kid. I seen the logo.
Yeah.
It's like it was on monster trucks and stuff, like, and it was just this like legendary brand. And then it also had a lot of pro like light to it, whether it be like pro motocross. And so it looked very like sharp and legendary. And so for me, I was like, man, I want to be a part of that brand. I feel like my style would align with that. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, I needed to feel that it aligned with me to then go pitch and try to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And so, so it's like, what companies do you enjoy and do you think you're like in alignment with?
Yeah.
And then those are usually who I try to go after. But like, it's
well, and that's why we look at sponsors more as like almost friendships too, because it's the relationships that you're building through all of this, like, and then even switching sponsors we were talking about, it's like a breakup.
Yes.
Because you have this relationship with this company, but they're not really going in the direction that you're going anymore. And there's other offers for companies that are going in the same direction as you. And so that, just in the last couple of years, that's what I've been going through.
Dude, absolutely. And for those listening to like really like put a point on that, it's like reps will change. And if your relationship isn't good, then you could lose your deal. Companies choose different directions, like why they market through you may change. So like it's a whole world out there, dude, with sponsorships and how to maintain them. And like,
and the key is just not putting anyone down, because you don't ever want to burn any bridge.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you definitely can't. But also then trying to maintain and like sustain by yourself is the goal. Like to have the least amount of sponsors is the goal. If you can run your business, paint enough cars, scale it to where you're just earning income to go do your classes, teach your chicks, go drifting yourself. Like that would be the real goal, because then you're unstoppable.
Well, what I wanted to do at SEMA this year is go around and try to raise money for the girls' events. That way, fuel is not cheap. It was over $2,000 round trip in diesel to tow my car to Utah and back. Mm-hmm. So if we can raise money to be able to put these events on in different places around the country, but have fuel, hotel, like just like the basic needs covered, like that's the next goal.
Okay, so I'll kind of cap this thought on like in the background at 144, like when I'm on the phone and I do mentor some of these drivers, I literally explain that to them. Like, for example, if you needed your gas to be paid for, right? It's like, just imagine you're talking to a company and there's a rep, and that rep is trying to put data together to pitch to his boss to get you sponsored, right? So it's like, hey, it's Nate to the rep, to the actual person signing the paycheck.
Yeah.
If Nate can say, hey, what's up? Diesel costs this, the mileage is this, and it's going to be $2,000 round trip for my gas. Like, this is what you're sponsoring. What service can I do for you for this? Then they're like, wow, I know that you know what I mean? Like, we're paying for something in exchange of a service, whether it be banners around the track, whether it be your product gets handed out to every chick in the thing, however you choose and can help them market or whatever their goals are. With that being said, most times the kids that call me are just like, I don't know, I just need some money. You know what I mean? Like they're not explaining like, what am I paying for? How are they helping make the wheels go around? And whether it literally be the Holiday Inn costs this much, here's the receipt, can you please help us? Like sometimes that's easier.
Yeah.
Like just show them the receipt of the Holiday Inn and ask them for help. Yeah. And then now they know they're putting you like up in a room to make it. Yeah. Just things like that, logistics behind that. But
our first for this last girls event was the first time that we had trophies and prizes and stuff like that. And I mean, even just coming in here and asking you if you wanted to have like a prize, and you did, that was a rad start. Is having these companies come together. Even like Konzai sent out stickers and keychains. KBD, he let me basically give away two $250 gift cards towards a kit. Yeah. Like stuff like that. Even though I'm not technically benefiting off of it, it was really cool to be able to like supply that for that like next generation of drifters out there. Yeah, yeah. So that was my start.
Dude, and that's a really easy like thing to comprehend, right? It's like, hey, what's up? We want to create some epic trophies for these girls that are going to win. There's going to be 3 trophies. I quoted them out. They're going to cost, let's say, $1,000. Then I'm going to go to the 5 people I know that are willing to work with me. I'm going to be like, let's divide the math. We need $1,000 between 5 of us. Your logo goes on here. It's engraved forever. It's like, dude, I have trophies around the shop from 2009, 2010. And it's like, to see the little logos on there from them is like timeless. Yeah. So like if you call me next week and you're like, hey Nate, we want you to be a part of the trophy thing. I need $500. I'm going to give you the $500. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I will keep that in mind.
Yeah, for real. But if you explain to me like how I can be involved in what I'm paying for, I'm much more willing to be like, dude, I want 144's logo on those trophies, because in 10 years when they're the next champions, they're going to see that logo on there. Like, I will be a part of that, you know? So when you're asking, the point of the story, guys, is just like when you're asking for money, like explain what they are paying for and what service you're providing, and that's the easiest way. Yeah. So. Yeah. But Melissa, this has been awesome. I'm trying to think of if there's anything else you wanted to bring up, or, you know, for the audience, I wanted you guys to meet Melissa and obviously hear about track days for chicks and where to find them and how to find them. Yep. And getting your car painted in Dallas. She's in obviously DFW. Yep. So yeah, I just wanted to bring some value, and we're getting to know each other, so it's cool. Yeah, yeah. I guess I don't really have. I mean, we could probably go on all day, but I mean, it's pretty much the gist of everything. Yeah. So thanks for having me. Yeah, absolutely. And just to end it here, remind me one time, like your shop's name and where you're at, and then again, like where do we find if we want to go drift with chicks? Like, plug your stuff for me real quick. Okay. So. To find where to come drifting with us, I mean, everything right now is LadiesDriftDay.com or at LadiesDriftDay. And as far as getting my car painted. Yes. If you want to get your car painted or some body work, or you crash into a wall, or you have a KBD kit that needs to be painted, because I can do those too. So the shop is under MD Paint and Body or Melissa Drifts Paint and Body. I wanted something Googleable with the brand that I've already created. And that is in Trenton, Texas, which is only like 15 minutes north of McKinney. So it looks really far on a map, but it's not that bad. It's 12 minutes north of Starbucks and Melissa. There you go. Not as bad as Denton, right? Yeah. All right, cool. And then last thing is just anything next for you? Where do we find you next? Are you going to be at a track day soon? Do you guys have an event coming up soon? Well, we're going into December for those watching. Like I say December, November. Potato. It's Christmas season. It's getting cold, right? So I know off season's coming up. Do you usually like take a break and kind of re-energize to go into the new year? We try to. Cool. Yeah, we try to take a little break because the holidays are expensive alone. Yep. So to incorporate drifting into that, we might do the New Year's event. I think at Cam's. Okay. We're talking about doing that.
But other than that, I mean, not until next season. Right now, like my mind is geared towards like the next Ladies Drift Day. When are we going to do that? The Z Car convention in September. Like,
cool.
I'm trying to kind of switch gears to those events that are so far in advance that even the tracks are like, contact us back in February.
Yeah.
But not necessarily the quicker events that are
cool.
more local. So
Awesome.
Maybe New Year's.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. And thanks for stopping by, and thanks for bringing value to the cool downs, and obviously thanks for printing with us, and hit me up about that trophy.
All right, sounds good.